Hey everyone, ready to make those IELTS essays shine? We're about to do a deep dive into how to write conclusions that don't just summarize, but really leave a mark. Impress those examiners.
Conclusions, yeah, they're so important but often get overlooked. Like people just want to rush through them.
Totally. But it's your last chance to show what you've got.
Yeah.
Make that final impression.
Exactly. It's about wrapping things up, but also giving the reader something to think about. Like that feeling when you finish a great book.
Ooh, yeah, and the ending just stays with you.
Yeah.
Well, we want your IELTS examiner to feel that way about your essay. Okay, so our first source, IELTS Writing, How to Write a Compelling Conclusion. It really dives into how a strong conclusion can boost that coherence and cohesion score. And they make a great point. A good conclusion does more than summarize. It reinforces your opinion and makes the essay feel complete.
It's like, think about it. Your introduction sets up the problem, your body paragraphs break it down, and then the conclusion, it's the solution. That final piece of the puzzle.
Right. Makes sense.
And this source even uses a cool example about technology and its impact on our lives. Remember that essay topic?
Yeah. I remember.
The thesis statement starts with, while technology presents challenges, I firmly believe it simplifies life by improving efficiency and access to information.
Okay, so how does their conclusion reword that?
It says, although technology has introduced certain complexities, its ability to enhance efficiency and accessibility ultimately makes life more convenient.
Interesting. It's not just swapping out words, is it?
Right. It's about showing a deeper understanding, expressing it in a new way that's engaging. That way the examiner sees you're thinking critically.
Not just like using memorized stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've restated our thesis, bringing back that main argument. What's the next step?
Summarizing the key points. The source calls it the essay's TLDR. But you got to be concise.
Right, you don't want to rehash everything.
Exactly. Just one or two sentences hitting those main points. Look at this example. In summary, while technology can sometimes be overwhelming, its advantages in improving communication, productivity, and education far outweigh the drawbacks.
They hit all the main points without getting lost in details, huh?
Yep. And notice how it doesn't get too specific.
It's like giving them a taste of everything, a little bite-sized treat. They already had the main course, and this is the sweet ending.
Perfect analogy. But there's one more element to this delicious meal, the element of surprise, that thing that makes the whole experience better.
You mean the final sentence?
Yes. Ending with a strong statement, something thought-provoking.
Ooh, the mic drop moment. This is where you go beyond the essay, right?
You got it. This source gives 3 techniques: a suggestion, a call to action, or a prediction about the future. All of those, they do more than summarize. They make the examiner think about the bigger picture.
Okay, so give me an example.
They use a prediction. As technology continues to evolve, individuals and societies must learn to manage its challenges while embracing its vast potential for progress.
So it's not just repeating a point, it's extending the discussion.
Right. It shows that you're really engaged with the topic, thinking about what it means for the future. That kind of critical thinking is what makes an essay stand out.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So we've covered the do's of writing a strong conclusion. But I'm guessing there are some things we should avoid too, right? Those conclusion killers.
Oh, absolutely. Like you can build the most amazing house, but if the door is flimsy and doesn't fit...
Yeah, it ruins the whole thing. So what should we avoid doing in our conclusions?
One of the biggest mistakes, and this source points it out, is bringing in new information at the end.
Oh, yeah.
Like imagine showing up to a party after it's over with an unexpected guest.
Nobody's ready for that.
Exactly. You need to stay focused and make sure your conclusion fits with the rest of your essay. It should give the examiner that feeling of completion. But there's more. Another common pitfall is making the conclusion too long.
Right.
Conciseness is key, remember. Just a few well-crafted sentences.
Okay, so quality over quantity.
You got it. A concise conclusion shows you can get to the point and make a strong impact without rambling on. And finally, don't be too repetitive. We talked about rephrasing and summarizing, but you have to do it in a way that feels new and insightful, not just repeating yourself.
So finding that sweet spot between reminding the examiner of your points and adding a new perspective or something to think about, like this source gives a great example of a conclusion that does all of that.
Oh, let's hear it. I want to see how they put all these principles together.
Okay, they say, while technology has introduced complexities, its ability to enhance communication and accessibility undeniably simplifies modern life. As society advances, it is crucial to strike a balance between managing digital challenges and leveraging its benefits for a better future.
Wow, they really packed it all in.
I know, right? It's like they took everything we discussed and put it into 2 perfect sentences, rephrasing the thesis, summarizing the key points, and then ending with that thought-provoking statement about the future. This conclusion, it doesn't just summarize, it elevates the whole essay.
Okay, I'm definitely feeling more confident about writing conclusions now. But let's keep going. There's always more to learn, right? Our next source is ACE, the IELTS conclusion. 7 powerful tips. Sounds promising.
Actionable advice, that's what we need for the IELTS.
Yeah.
Every point matters. I wonder what this one adds to what we've already learned.
Well, they start off with something that seems small but makes a big difference. They say to avoid cliches like in conclusion or to sum up.
Oh yeah, those are so overused. Right, it's like wearing the wrong outfit to a fancy event. It just doesn't fit.
Exactly. They suggest being more subtle, using the techniques we've already talked about, like rephrasing the thesis and summarizing in a way that flows naturally.
It's like the difference between making a grand entrance and just barging in. Sometimes subtlety is way more powerful.
I agree. And speaking of subtle cues, this source talks about mirroring the introduction.
Mirroring? What do they mean?
They suggest using a similar sentence structure or even some of the same vocabulary in your conclusion as you did in your introduction.
Oh, interesting. To create that sense of symmetry.
Exactly. It's like a beautifully framed picture. It just draws your eye in.
I can see how that would impress the examiner.
Yeah.
Showing that you've thought about the structure and how everything fits together.
It shows you're not just randomly listing points, you're creating a unified piece of writing. And that's super important for the IELTS. This source also stresses the importance of keeping a consistent tone throughout your essay.
Oh, right. No sudden changes in style.
Exactly. Like if you've been formal and objective throughout the essay, your conclusion shouldn't suddenly become casual and personal. It just wouldn't make sense.
It'd be like wearing a tuxedo with flip-flops. Total clash.
Aha, exactly. Consistency shows control and understanding. And speaking of consistency, they also talk about keeping your conclusion concise. They recommend 2 3 sentences, which aligns perfectly with what we learned earlier.
It's like a haiku. Every word has to count. You don't want to lose the examiner's attention.
Brevity is key in the conclusion. It's about making a strong final impression without going overboard. And they also reiterate something we discussed earlier. No new information in the conclusion.
Yeah, that seems to be a universal rule.
For a good reason. The conclusion is not the place to suddenly bring in ideas or evidence that you haven't already talked about in the essay. It's like trying to fit one more suitcase into an already packed car.
Not going to happen.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got conciseness, consistency, and no new information. What else?
This source emphasizes careful proofreading, especially in the conclusion. It's easy to miss those little errors when you're focused on writing, but even a small typo can ruin the impression you've worked so hard to create.
It's like a stain on a perfectly ironed shirt.
Exactly. Taking a minute to proofread shows attention to detail and makes sure your work shines through. And lastly, they remind us about practice. Writing conclusions for different IELTS essay topics helps solidify your understanding and refine your skills.
Practice is key for anything, right? The more you write, the more comfortable you'll become.
It's like learning a musical instrument. You can study all you want, but you have to actually play to get better. The more you practice writing conclusions, the more natural and effortless it will become.
Okay, let's shift gears for a minute and look at this research paper titled The Impact of Conclusions on IELTS Writing Scores. That sounds a bit academic.
Ooh, research paper. But they probably have some interesting insights, right?
I'm always curious about these because they often reveal patterns we might not notice otherwise. Like, what did they actually find about conclusions and IELTS scores? Well, they analyzed hundreds of essays, and they found a strong connection between well-written conclusions and higher scores, which isn't surprising given everything we've been talking about.
It's like having scientific proof for something we already know.
Right. But what's interesting is they dug into the reasons why conclusions have such a big impact.
Oh, what did they find?
They found that examiners really like conclusions that show you understand the topic and can synthesize information. It's not about following a formula. It's about showing you can think critically.
So they can tell when a conclusion is genuine and when it's just going through the motions.
Exactly. And that brings us back to what we were talking about earlier, like avoiding cliches and ending strong. A good conclusion shows you've really thought about the ideas and have something insightful to say.
It's about showing you're not just repeating information, you're forming your own conclusions based on the evidence. Speaking of critical thinking, this paper also mentions that conclusions that offer a unique perspective or leave the reader with something to think about, those tend to score higher.
Makes sense. It's not just about summarizing, it's about adding something new to the discussion.
Like leaving the audience wanting more, sparking their curiosity. That shows a level of engagement that examiners will appreciate.
It shows you're not just completing a task, you're contributing to the conversation. Okay, I'm seeing a common thread here. All these sources, even though they're different, they all emphasize thoughtfulness and insight in the conclusion. It's not just a formality, it's your chance to really shine.
You got it. It highlights how important it is to communicate effectively. It's not just about the rules, it's about conveying meaning and engaging your audience. Let's switch things up again. How about a blog post this time?
Sounds good. Which one?
It's called 5 Ways to Make Your IELTS Conclusions Stand Out. I'm always looking for fresh ideas.
Ooh, me too. I love getting creative.
Okay, so the first tip is to use a rhetorical question. It's like inviting the reader to keep thinking about the topic even after the essay is over.
Oh, that's clever. Makes them an active participant instead of just a passive reader. But the question has to be good, right?
Of course. It should be relevant to your argument, thought-provoking, and subtly guide the reader towards your conclusion. The next suggestion is using a quote from a famous person or an expert.
Ooh, using a quote. That's a bold move. I could see how it would make your conclusion more memorable, but you'd have to choose it carefully, right?
Absolutely. It can't just be any random quote. It has to connect to your argument and reinforce your points.
It's like having a famous person endorse your presentation.
Yeah.
Gives your words more weight.
Exactly. Another technique they suggest is offering a solution to the problem you discussed in the essay. It shows you're not just talking about the problem, you're thinking about how to fix it.
It's like solving a puzzle and then suggesting ways to improve the design. Shows you're going above and beyond.
Demonstrates problem-solving skills, which is always a good thing. And to connect with the reader on a deeper level, they suggest using an anecdote or a personal story.
Storytelling. Everyone loves a good story. It definitely makes things more relatable and memorable. Adds a human touch.
It connects with the reader emotionally, makes your argument more real. A personal story can create empathy and understanding.
Like adding color to a black and white sketch. Brings it to life.
And finally, they suggest ending with a call to action, encouraging the reader to do something or think differently about the issue. A powerful way to end an essay.
It shows you're passionate about the topic and believe your words can make a difference. It's like ending a speech with a rousing call to arms. Gets everyone fired up. Wow, this has been such a deep dive. We've covered so much. I feel so much more prepared to tackle those IELTS conclusions now. How about you?
Me too. We've really explored what makes a conclusion effective, and anyone listening will have a lot of tools to write a conclusion that not only meets the IELTS criteria, but also shows off their writing skills. But one thing I've noticed is that there isn't one right way to do it.
Yeah, that's true. We even saw some conflicting advice, which just goes to show that adaptability and critical thinking are important.
Right. Like one source said to mirror the introduction for symmetry, but another suggested ending with a question or a story for a more open-ended feel. It's interesting how different approaches can work depending on what you're trying to achieve.
It's like having a toolbox, right? You wouldn't use a hammer for every job.
Exactly. You choose the right tool for the situation. Same with writing conclusions. The best approach will depend on the essay topic, your writing style, and what you want to say.
So it's about knowing your options and choosing what works best.
It's about being a thoughtful writer, not just following a formula. And that's what will impress the examiners. Okay, ready for our final source?
Hit me with it. What is it?
It's a YouTube video called IELTS Conclusion Hacks. Boost your score in minutes. The title is definitely catchy.
I'm always a little skeptical of anything that promises quick fixes, but I'm open to hearing what they have to say.
Me too. Let's see if there are any hidden gems in there.
All right, so the video starts off by emphasizing the importance of planning your conclusion before you even start writing the main body of your essay.
Oh, that's important. It's so easy to rush the conclusion when you're focused on getting everything else written.
Right. But planning it beforehand means it will flow naturally from the rest of your essay. It's like having a blueprint for a building. You wouldn't just start building without a plan.
It's about being intentional with your writing, making sure all the pieces fit together. So how do they suggest planning the conclusion?
They say to take a few minutes before you start writing and think about the main points you want to highlight in your conclusion and how you want to tie everything together. They also say to think about different concluding strategies and choose the one that best suits the essay topic.
Like creating a roadmap for your thoughts.
Exactly. Okay, so once you have a plan, The video stresses summarizing the main points of your essay without being repetitive. We've heard this before, but it's worth repeating.
Definitely. Repeating yourself word for word is a sure way to make your conclusion boring.
You want to remind the examiner of your key points, but you have to keep it fresh and concise. Use different words and sentence structures.
It's like a good movie ending. It brings everything together without showing you all the same scenes again.
Love that analogy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what else should we avoid?
The video reminds us not to introduce new information in the conclusion. That's something we've talked about a lot today.
It's a common mistake, but it's important to stay focused and make sure your conclusion is directly related to the essay topic.
Like taking a detour on a road trip. You might enjoy the scenery, but it'll throw you off course.
Okay, stay on track. Got it. What about making the conclusion flow smoothly? Any tips for that?
Yes, the video suggests using transition words and phrases to signal the conclusion and create a smooth transition from the main body of your essay.
Transition words are like the glue that holds everything together. They help the reader follow your logic.
Exactly. They make your essay easier to understand and more enjoyable to read. Another tip is to use a confident and assertive tone in your conclusion. It shows the examiner that you know what you're talking about.
It's about projecting confidence in your ideas, showing the examiner that you've mastered the material.
It's like giving a presentation. Even if you're nervous inside, you have to project confidence to make your message convincing.
Great analogy. And finally, the video reminds us to proofread our conclusion carefully.
Always important. Those little grammar and spelling errors can really hurt your score. Take the time to proofread. It's worth it.
Definitely. Okay, we've reached the end of our deep dive into IELTS conclusions. Feeling much more confident now.
Me too. We've covered a lot of ground and learned so much from all these different sources. We talked about planning, summarizing, staying on topic, using transitions, projecting confidence, and proofreading.
And we saw how all these techniques can be applied in different ways depending on the essay topic and your writing style. It's about having the right tools and using them strategically.
That's a great way to put it. It's about being a thoughtful writer, not just following a formula. But as we're wrapping up, I'm struck by something.
Ooh, tell me. What are you thinking? I'm all ears.
Well, we've covered a lot of the technical stuff, rephrasing, summarizing, avoiding those overused phrases. But what about the feeling, the emotion? How do we make our conclusions really connect with the reader?
That's a great point. We've been so focused on the how-tos that we haven't talked about the heart of it. It's like we've built this amazing house, but haven't thought about how to make it feel like a home.
Exactly. And I think it comes down to being authentic and passionate about what you're writing. If you really care about the topic, that'll come through in your conclusion and the reader will feel it.
So it's not just about checking things off a list. It's about showing that you believe in what you're saying.
Yes. It's about using your words to inspire, to challenge, to make people think. Your conclusion should be more than just a summary. It should be a statement that shows your understanding and your own unique perspective.
I love that. It's about letting your voice come through, your personality, making it personal, but still keeping it appropriate for the IELTS.
Right. And remember that as you're practicing. Don't be afraid to let your perspective shine through. The examiners want to see your critical thinking and originality, not just memorized phrases.
Okay, that's good to know. So just to recap everything we've talked about today, we've learned a ton of strategies for writing amazing IELTS conclusions. We talked about restating the thesis, summarizing those key points, and ending with a strong statement or a call to action.
We also talked about planning your conclusion, keeping your tone consistent, avoiding cliches and new information, using transitions, being confident, and, of course, proofreading carefully.
It's like we've built a whole toolkit for writing conclusions, full of useful tips and strategies. Now it's all about practice, right? Trying out these techniques with different essay prompts.
Exactly. The more you practice, the better you'll get. The IELTS is a tough exam, but it's also a chance to show off your writing and your understanding of the world.
And as you practice, think about the message you want to leave the reader with. How do you want them to feel? What do you want them to think about? Let that guide you as you write.
That's a great way to think about it. It's about connecting with your audience on a deeper level, giving them something to ponder.
All right, listeners, that's a wrap for our deep dive into IELTS conclusions. We hope this was helpful as you prepare for your exam.
Keep learning, keep practicing, and good luck on your IELTS journey.